Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind of reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is George Ortega, and I'm here to talk about happiness, because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Tonight's topic is happiness as our guiding purpose. And what I'd like to first do is go over the four components of happiness. Basically, happiness is comprised of experiencing pleasure, not experiencing displeasure, and these two components are called hedonic because they relate to pleasure. And then it involves satisfaction. Satisfaction first with the domains of our life, like our work life, our family life, our friends, where we live, how much money we make, and then just satisfaction with our life in general. It's called global satisfaction. Okay, so let's go over the relationship first between pleasure and happiness. Basically, well, pleasure is a more immediate sensation. It could be sensory, it could be just involved with the body, and the mind doesn't really have to get involved, or at least the thought processes. Whereas happiness is more of a state of mind that has pleasure components, but it also has judgment components, evaluations. In other words, the satisfaction components of happiness relate to our evaluating our life and the events in our life in a certain way that will basically create pleasure, in a kind of a cognitive or thought-based way. Okay, and then, it's important to know that pleasure really is the foundation to happiness. It's really what happiness is about. Happiness, of course, is a prolonged experience of pleasure. Okay, I want to go through how happiness has been understood both in the past and in the present. Firstly, it was understood by the Greeks, specifically Aristotle, to be the highest good. I mean, Aristotle considered it the purpose of life, why we do everything we do. He considered it our motivator, what we're living for. He actually devoted an entire book to it called Nicomachean Ethics, where he just describes it in great detail. Then Freud and the modern psychologists also, defined happiness and pleasure, and they did so by what's known as hedonic principles. These are like principles that they relate to pleasure. Freud's was called the pleasure principle, and it basically said that we're hardwired to really seek pleasure at all times. I mean, everything we do, all of our conscious moments are devoted to seeking pleasure. And so that was called the pleasure principle. And then he also introduced something that was known as the reality principle, that basically says that, well, it's not just, I mean, while our basic drive and motivator in life is pleasure, we have to have something to govern that or to regulate that, because a lot of times we will want or seek certain pleasures that really aren't in our best interest for the long run, or even immediately. They may be dangerous pleasures, they just may not be wise. So that he explained the idea of a reality principle that basically governs and mediates and evaluates the pleasure that we get, to make sure that that we are really benefiting ourselves with the pleasure, and that the pleasure won't ultimately cause more pain in the long run. Okay, so yeah, it's important to realize that that the purpose of every thought and every feeling and everything that we do is to both decrease pain and to increase pleasure. And we do that in order to either maintain or increase our level of happiness. So that applies to everything. I mean, our work, all the work we do, our leisure time, being with friends, our chores, shopping, everything we do is designed to bring us more pleasure. Now, sometimes we have to devote a certain amount of time to what we're doing in order to be able to do it right. Like if we have a job, it demands a certain amount of concentration, and we've got to really give that attention to whatever we're doing. But a lot of times, we have a certain kind of leeway to be able to think our own thoughts, and so it's important to just really keep in mind that while we're doing whatever we're doing, our main purpose is really to feel happy and to feel as happy as possible, because we can do both at once. We can really work at whatever we're working on and feel really good. Okay. It's important to understand that that happiness is our guiding purpose in life, because the more we understand this, the better able we'll be to seek pleasure and happiness. If a lot of times we'll be confused as to our goals. For example, a lot of us think that that by making a lot of money, by having a lot of money, we will become happier. And so for a lot of us, our guiding purpose is shifted from being very happy and becoming happier to having money or making more money. And the research demonstrates that that having and making money affects happiness very little. So it's just not wise to spend too much time in activities that that really are intended to serve happiness and create happiness, that really aren't all that effective. Okay. So yeah, we seek happiness a lot of times in a lot of different ways that aren't science, the research has demonstrated that aren't really effective at all. Like, for example, a lot of times we'll seek status. We'll seek to be very to have other people, let's say, see us in a certain way, to gain a certain amount of recognition. And that has been demonstrated not to really increase one's level of happiness. The same as obtaining knowledge. A lot of times we think that the more we know, the happier we'll be. And again, that's not related to happiness that much. So basically, it's good to really understand that that a lot of the things we do are really not serving our basic purpose, and our basic guiding purpose really is happiness. A lot of times, we'll actually resort to negative emotions, thinking that that they're serving us, that through feeling them and expressing them, they're going to serve us. But often, usually, they'll detract from our happiness, and they're not necessary. For example, if something happens that doesn't go according to the way we want it to, a lot of times, many of us think, well, we should become angry. Anger is the right response, and that'll make things better. Well, that used to be a view that was held until the 80s, where a lot of research was done that demonstrated that often, usually more times than not, when we become angry, when we allow ourselves to become angry and express that anger, a lot of times through hostile ways, that'll actually work against us. A lot of times we'll choose to become sad or afraid or something, thinking that that's for our best interest. But generally, these emotions are usually there to communicate some kind of situation to us, that something needs to be addressed. But once we felt them, the emotion has done its job. So it's not necessary, and it's actually counterproductive to continue feeling that negative emotion. So we should go from those negative emotions back to our guiding purpose of being happier, which means minimizing them. Okay, what I'd like to do now is a song. Okay, this is a song. And basically the idea behind this song is that, like, since our basic purpose in life, our basic drive in life is pleasure and happiness, that I think sometime in the future we're going to be much, much better at it. So this song is called Inevitability.
As the world moves to the future, we're all coming to be creatures of paradise. No more pain and no more hunger within a planet filled with love and delight. That's the way of evolution, what we're in every way, every day, coming to be. That's the way of the planet, a divine, guided, driven destiny. Think about it, understand it, see how it's got to come to be. There's no way to get around it. All the love that now is bound up, sooner than you think will be set free. Then the world will be so perfectly in harmony with everyone. Sweet emotion will fill every part of every land under the sun. And this bliss will reach throughout the ages in wondrous journey to eternity. And our lives within the universe will finally in peace be complete. Think about it, understand it, see how it's got to come to be. There's no way to get around it. All the love that now is bound up, sooner than you think will be set free.
Okay, so then, if happiness is our guiding purpose, which, history and modern science has pretty much demonstrated that it is, sometimes we want to ask ourselves, well, can we get much happier? Can we get happier? Because a lot of people believe we can't. For example, like our basic personality traits, our happiness is actually 50% genetic. Our level of happiness is based on our heredity, the genes we acquired from our parents and that they acquired from their parents. But the idea is that, it's only 50% genetic, so 50% of it is based on our experience, our learning, what we do, what we've done in the past. And even more than this, psychologists have studied happiness comprehensively since the 60s, but in the late 70s they began to do research on increasing happiness. And these studies have all demonstrated that it's very easy to increase one's level of happiness in as little as 2 weeks. Really, through various means, through group discussions, through self-statements, through setting and achieving goals. It's just very easy to increase one's level of happiness with just some guidance and effort. Okay, so I guess if happiness is our guiding purpose and it is possible to increase, it's not all that easy though, because there are difficulties in increasing our level of happiness, and partly because it's not something we're taught. There are books on happiness out there, but for the most part, a lot of the books are based on untested philosophies that really reflect the author's personal thoughts on the subject. A lot of the people who write happiness books really aren't psychologists, and they don't really rely on the years of study that have been done on happiness. And then there are books by psychologists about happiness, but unfortunately a lot of these books will deal more with explaining the findings, with just going through the kind of research that has been done, who's happy, who's not, things like that. So they're basically more academic than tutorial. And yeah, there really aren't any courses in this in school. I mean, the schools don't teach. I mean, it's a great irony. It's probably the greatest irony of our lives that we spend 12 years going to school, and presumably we're learning things that will be of benefit to us in life. But within those 12 years, we just never learn the principles and techniques necessary to be happy and become much happier. And of course, there are no businesses businesses teaching happiness. So a lot of times, while becoming happier is very easy based on the studies that have been done, for us to become happier as individuals, it'll take some work. It'll take going through different books and finding books that really explain the principles well and really can teach us. Okay, but I can let's go through some principles now, though, that'll help us to be more in tune with happiness as our guiding purpose. Because the idea is the more we understand that happiness is our guiding purpose, the more we're going to devote a lot of time to it. We're going to really devote as much time as it deserves. Okay. So like the one thing we could do is, we can remind ourselves, like by putting up signs, having it, like happiness is the purpose, putting it up on our desk, on our refrigerator, places where we'll see it, just to remind ourselves that whatever we're doing, happiness is the goal, happiness is why we're supposed to be doing it. We can get creative with this. We can like put it on our answering machine. I think my answering machine, when I go to hear the messages, it'll play back. Actually, my old machine did this. I don't know if the new one does, but some of the machines will play back the outgoing message, so you can just put it on there and remind yourself in that way. You can also just say it, just saying daily something like happiness is my one desire and goodness is my one obligation. I always like to talk about goodness also with this because it seems like, happiness is a desire, but in this world, not just for our own happiness, but for the happiness of those around us, it's important to be good. And that's probably a manifestation of the reality principle. The reality principle that Freud explained really has to do with, it's not just about seeking pleasure. You have to seek it in correct ways and in right ways, and goodness goes along with that. Okay, I think something that we should be focusing on is like, we should be telling ourselves, if we're not enjoying what we're doing, we're not doing it right, and this should apply to everything. Studies have found, and I think most people know that, you'll have, let's say, two people doing the same job, and one person might really, find it very, very gratifying, while another person may find it incredibly, uncomfortable. And obviously, one person is really tuned into the pleasure of the activity, and the other person isn't. So again, just having ourselves be aware that we should be enjoying whatever we're doing, and if we're not enjoying it that much, we are in effect doing it wrong, because part of what we should be doing with whatever we're doing is enjoying it as much as possible. Okay. Another thing we should do is question our negative feelings. If we're having a negative feeling, obviously we're not focused on our happiness. We're not remembering that happiness is our guiding purpose. So basically we're being distracted by these negative feelings. So we should question them. If we're having a negative feeling, we say, well, why are we having this? And then of course we should also realize that these negative feelings are just not necessary. I've done shows on this. Negative feelings are basically messengers. They tell us that something is wrong, something needs to be addressed. But once they've done that, they've done their job. So it doesn't make sense. It's not rational to continue feeling those negative emotions after they've communicated their message. And something else that we should do is to not do the kinds of things that we have to do and that don't really bring about more happiness any more than we have to. And this involves actually understanding what will make us happier or not, because a lot of us again believe that making more money will make one happier, and the studies, 40 years of research pretty much demonstrate that it doesn't. That really, the difference, there's a very slight difference between those people who have more money and those people who have less. Now, under the poverty line, there's much more of a difference, but above the poverty line, it's making more money generally won't make one happier, and so we shouldn't suffer through kinds of activities like working harder, maybe doing a lot of exercise. That's another thing. A lot of us do exercise, and exercise is really good for the body, and a certain amount is beneficial. It brings up endorphins. It really helps our bodies in many ways. But once you've got a certain level of health, exercising more is not going to make you happier. And a lot of times exercise involves pain. So again, we shouldn't needlessly put ourselves through pains that aren't going to lead to greater happiness. Something else we should be doing is overcoming desires. Basically, our desires are overriding our basic purpose. Anytime we have a desire, it's like shifting our focus away from being happy to obtaining whatever it is we desire. And so, considering that, really, there's only one thing that we really should be desiring, and that's happiness. Anything else that we desire is really, again, shifting our focus away from our main desire. The Buddhists understood this. It's one of the four noble truths that they understand that a lot of our suffering, perhaps all of our suffering, or most of it, really comes from desiring that things are different from what they are. Okay, something else I think that we can do in a kind of a more social way. Because it would help if society, if our world ran more in accordance with happiness being our guiding purpose. Because that is the truth of it, and it's our guiding purpose. It's our main desire. So really, our governments should really consider it very important. A lot of times our government considers our level of income very important. Income as individuals, income as a country. So when you talk about, when you hear politicians talking before elections, they'll talk about saving money, giving the taxpayers more money, things like that. The economy's doing well. It's not, but generally, it's really, they seldom, if ever, talk about happiness. And I think if one would want to become a bit political and encourage politicians to really acknowledge that happiness is our purpose, that happiness is our guiding purpose, and so then they can formulate policies that more directly address that, like teaching happiness to our kids in schools and promoting it in other ways through various programs. And we should, in order to keep happiness as our guiding purpose, we should really get into the habit of practicing happy thoughts. Thinking and feeling happy thoughts is like any kind of a habit we would strive to undertake. It's something that the more we engage in it, the easier it's going to become. Basically, we might have to work for months just forcing ourselves to have pleasant thoughts, to say to ourselves, this is great, I feel wonderful, this is excellent, Our minds may not generally work in that way, but through time and effort, just telling ourselves, hey, this is wonderful, I feel good, my life is going great, then these thoughts will become habitual. It'll get to the point where we'll be having these thoughts without having to consciously direct our minds to have them. Okay, now, again, I talked about happiness and goodness a bit before, and I think it's important that we go over it again. Happiness, as Aristotle pointed out, is our highest good. So in a sense, goodness is also our guiding purpose. If happiness is our highest good, naturally we're here to do good. And that's actually something that philosophers understand. As far back as the Greeks, it's been pretty much understood that a person cannot, in any manner, do something that they consider wrong at the time of the doing. I mean, upon reflection, we might, look back and say to ourselves, oh, well, yeah, what I did wasn't really that right. But at the time we're doing something, it's like we're hardwired biologically to not be able to do anything wrong, because sometimes, we'll always justify what we're doing. Happiness is the purpose of goodness. We're good because we know that being good will bring us happiness. It's again that reality principle working. So it's very good. It's very important to understand the relationship between goodness and happiness. And actually, now with goodness, there's a philosophy, utilitarian philosophy, that basically measures goodness as being what creates the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. So this happiness-goodness connection is very, very important. All right, well, that's all we have time for tonight. Thanks for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. This is George Ortega saying, be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join me again next week here on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.